So, with the recent win of Donald Trump winning the election, a lot of Democratic women are becoming completely unhinged. And it's mainly over the issue of reproductive rights. And when I say that with quotations, I'm not saying it to be mean. I'm just saying that a lot of people who's throwing around that term don't really know what rights are or what rights mean. And I'll break that down in a second. But one of the main issues that I see as it pertains to all these Democratic women having meltdowns is that they weren't taught true proper civics, they are indoctrinated into socialism, and they don't know true history. And a combination of all that leads to an annoying sense of entitlement. So it's really like fathers spoiling their daughters and the daughters becoming spoiled brats. So politically, the government being your daddy is spoiling you with civil rights, and when he takes them away from you, you want to what? You want to scream and cry and be entitled to them. So let's look up what reproductive rights are. Reproductive rights are about the legal rights to contraception, abortion, fertility treatment, reproductive health, and access to information about one's body as it relates to reproduction. You might also hear this called reproductive autonomy. It means you have the power of the law to protect you and to allow you the right to make your own choices about birth control, pregnancy, and having children. Abortion, including access to legal safe procedures to end a pregnancy, is one reproductive right, but there are others. Now, let's go back to the fact when I said the government's acting as your daddy, because we're going to look up a doctrine called parens patria or parens patriae. Parens patriae, father of his country, parent of the country. In England, the king. In the United States, the state as a sovereign, referring to the sovereign power of guardianship over persons under disability, such as minors and insane and incompetent persons. Now, if most people would read this, they will automatically assume that nothing in here applies to them. But in law, all U.S. citizens qualify as minors. And the way some of these women act, they're definitely insane and incompetent persons. Definition of minority, the state or condition of a minor, infancy. And also note this can be talking about mental condition as well. Minor, and here's the definition that most people would assume, an infant or person who is under the age of legal competence, one under 21, a term derived from the civil law which described a person under a certain age as less than as many years. Also, less, of less consideration, lower, a person of inferior condition. And in law, whenever you read the word state or condition, it's also synonymous with the word status, which is your standing, state, or condition. And as I mentioned, all U.S. citizens are deemed minors to the United States, which acts as your daddy, all stemming from the 14th Amendment. And Section 1 of the 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. And subject to is in bold letters because even that's a legal definition. Subject to, liable, subordinate, subservient, inferior, obedient to, governed or affected by. Now, why am I defining all this legal jargon? It's because the language of the law dictates society. So when you're talking about reproductive rights, well, you got to know what kind of rights reproductive rights are. And reproductive rights are civil rights. And what are civil rights? Well, let's go to the courts and find out. And this is from a judge speaking from the case Nickel versus Rosenfeld. When we speak of a person having a right, we must necessarily refer to a civil right as distinguished from the elemental ideal of rights absolute. We must have in mind a right given and protected by law, and a person's enjoyment thereof is regulated entirely by the law which creates it. Now, if the government gives you anything, that means it has the power to take it back. So now that means we got to go back to history and we got to talk about Roe v. Wade. Well, prior to Roe v. Wade, was there anything such as an abortion right? Before 1973 Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade, abortions were prohibited in 33 states and only allowed in special circumstances in 13 others. But women in those states still had abortions, some through unsafe so-called back alley procedures. Others tried to induce abortions themselves. And this was not that long ago, only 1973. So now we have to talk about 1973 till 2022 when it was overturned, but we have to talk about why it was overturned. Because the issue brought up in the Dobbs v. Jackson case was whether the right to abortion was constitutionally protected or not. And here's what the court said. Held, the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled. Side note, most people don't know that Roe v. Wade was partly overturned already, which is why the Casey decision is so important and always mentioned. And the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elective representatives. What is the court saying there? If something is returned to you, that means something was taken away first. And if you read the case, you will see that the courts admit that they had no authority to even make the decision in Roe v. Wade in the first place. And again, they explain why in the case. But most of these people don't read court cases because they don't have the mental fortitude to even read through the case, let alone comprehend it, because they don't have legal dictionaries. And you can contribute that to socialism because socialism takes away individual initiative and tell people it's okay because the state and the government's going to do it for you. But when the government brats don't get their way, they want to start crying, not knowing they are the ones in error. There's a maxim in law that states the power to create implies the power to destroy. Remember, civil rights are privileges. They're just called rights, but they are privileges. And the word rights is a word that needs to be qualified every time it's used. So stop assuming that you know what words means and actually take the time to go look it up. Because the ironic part is, in the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, the courts are saying we're giving the power back to you, but your dumbass is saying no, take it back and regulate us all. Why? Because in socialism, you don't take responsibility. You abdicate the responsibility to somebody else. That's proof that you've been indoctrinated against your own self-interest. Because even when they're trying to give you the power back, you don't want it because you can't handle it and you don't know what to do with it. But this is just a microcosm of the whole issue at large in this country. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, it's all one big ruse to keep you fighting and divided. The issue is you're fighting over distractions that seem very real to you because you've been indoctrinated against your own self-interest. And they all know this. They just put on a good dog and pony show in order to keep you in your feelings. And nobody's in their feelings more than Democratic feminist women. So let's read this part one more time. And the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elective representatives. So let's go to the definitions again and see where we can find that in a definition. Oh, look at that. Republican government. One in which the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people and are exercised by the people either directly or through representatives chosen by the people, to whom those powers are specially delegated. But your dumbass want to give it back to the federal government because you don't even know the difference. But what is this word sovereignty? Because now you're misconstrued that sovereignty is automatically construed as sovereign citizen BS. Sovereignty, the supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable power by which any independent state is governed. Supreme political authority, paramount control of the Constitution and frame of government and its administration. The self-sufficient source of political power from which all specific political powers are derived. So if the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people under Republican form of government, why do you think they're always pushing this word democracy? The federal government and their agents are always pushing democracy because they took your power away from you via the 14th Amendment and they centralized all the powers to themselves. You don't know that because they don't teach you real history. And according to Article 4, Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. And that simply means that the people are sovereign in all the states' governments. But again, they took that away via the 14th Amendment in 1868 and officially in 1871. And don't misconstrue this with Republican Party. So Republicans who don't know this as well, don't trip. That doesn't mean for you specifically. It's talking about the foundational form of government. So the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party is all based on a faulty foundation. It's not even on the proper form of government. They're running that off a democracy form of government, which we don't have. And if you didn't know, the definition of a democracy is a government of the masses. It is authority derived through mass meeting or any other form of direct expression. It results in mobocracy. The attitude towards property is communistic, which is why you don't own anything. Negating property rights. The attitude towards law is that the will of the majority shall regulate, whether it be based upon deliberation or governed by passion, which is why y'all always in your feelings, and which is why they use demagoguery, prejudice, and impulse without restraint or regard to consequences. Results in demagogism, license, agitation, discontent, and anarchy. And a lot of y'all are feeling this today. In a republic, authority is derived through the election by the people of public officials best fitted to represent them. Attitude towards property is respect for laws and individual rights and a sensible economic procedure. Attitude towards law is the administration of justice in accord with fixed principles and established evidence with a strict regard to consequences. A greater number of citizens and extent of territory may be brought within its compass. It avoids the dangerous extremes of either tyranny or mobocracy. Results in statesmanship, liberty, reason, justice, which we don't have. We don't have reason, and we definitely don't have liberty, contentment, and progress. And it's very ironic that a lot of people on the left want to say the Constitution is an old and outdated government when it doesn't suit their needs, but they want to say abortion is constitutionally protected, but get mad when it's found out that it isn't. You can't have it both ways. So, all that to say, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. There's no such thing as reproductive rights. Those are civil rights. Civil rights can be granted or taken away at any moment in time. And you need to read and comprehend the constitutions, not just the federal, but your states as well. And you can start by getting these books. And make sure you share this video out because somebody needs to be offended.